We're joined on the line by Defuse. Your last time we chatted was about 2.5 years ago, and there's been a lot changing from there. Originally, you were out of Texas, I believe it was, and now you've moved to LA. And why exactly the big move, other than all the hurricanes?
Well, one is to get out of bush country, I guess. I love Austin. I actually came from Austin, so it was definitely a big decision to move. I love the city. I lived in Texas all my life, but I realized I was flying all the time to go do studio work in Los Angeles, and it was one of those things that I just wanted to be a lot closer to a studio. And when I met my production partner, Mike Karatska, and we started doing some projects together, I realized that I really wanted to work on a much more frequent basis than just flying in and working for 2 or 3 days and then flying back home. So now it's just been great. We've probably released about 15 different dance tracks on our record label Los Angeles Recordings, and we also released a full-length album called Skyline Lounge last year, which we were really happy with, and we're actually jumping back in the studio here in the next few weeks to start on the next album. So that's really been a big part about the move, and I really love LA. I live right near the beach, and I'm always biking, 15-minute bike ride to the beach just to hang out, and you can't beat the weather, so it's great.
Now, you mentioned your label. You have a lot going on with that. You've just come out with a new, I guess it's the best of Defuse in the last 10 years. How happy are you with that release so far?
Well, it's really one of the things where I'm really happy with it. Originally, when we went in, I wanted to maybe redo a couple of the songs and then edit down a few things, but we ended up changing, remixing a lot of the older tracks, and I found that I was really enjoying doing that, especially blowing the dust off some of the older tracks and kind of bringing them more into a modern framework with new production. Sometimes that meant, for instance, like the song She Rides, where I do the vocals on that, I really wanted to redo the entire song. I really liked the original, but I really thought, my voice has kind of changed over the last 8 years since that track was written, and so we went in, we completely redid that, and then I did a brand new track with the Skunk Frog that we recorded in New York a few months back, and then a lot of the other stuff meant just re-editing it, remastering. So I'm really happy with everything. I think everything has a really consistent feel to it, and even though some of the tracks are up to 10 years old, I don't think they sound really that dated as a lot of tracks do after a few years. The music changes so frequently, and I was really happy the way the whole project turned out. It turned out to be about a year of work in the studio to make it happen.
Does Jesse have really, really tall doors and ceilings where he works in his studio?
Yeah, he's one of the few DJs that's actually taller than me, but yeah, he's got these, big archways that he's knocked his head into several times. There's like little marks on all the doorways.
So where did T4L come from, and what's the behind that?
That's Thanks for Listening, and that is something that I've always signed off on, as far as just writing to friends and fans on MySpace, and even just signing CDs or whatever. It was always Thanks for Listening, and it's always, so I shortened that to T4L, and that's just one of those things that I just I always appreciate everybody listening to what I do. I mean, that's the reason I'm out there in the studio and out there performing live and everything, and I just want a little subtle way of letting people know that I do appreciate that they're checking my music out.
Now, you worked with a couple extra people on this album, Scanners, Deep Architecture, and Howard was on there as well as Bill Hamill. Was there anyone that really jumped out and then you had a really lot of fun time working with?
I've really enjoyed working with everyone. I have to say that every time I've jumped in the studio with different people, it's always been a really great experience. One thing that is really cool and with everybody I've worked with is that we always check our egos at the door. There's never any kind of, we're always very respectful to each other and our feedback and the way we could see things, and we always accept what each other's putting into the project. Sometimes there's some different musical element that comes in, and you're like, what, I'm really not liking that, but you at least give it some time to flesh out. And then sometimes you both come to an agreement, hey, that's not really working, let's switch it. But the thing is that's the biggest thing, is just having respect for each other. And every studio session I've done with all of these producers always involves a lot of laughs and a lot of just goofing around, and we just have fun with it, really.
Is there a lot of crossover with different styles of software and so forth that you use, or is it all kind of how compatible nowadays, and you can, you did yours on Cubase, I'll do mine on Ableton, whatever, right?
Yeah, it's all done with Logic Audio. It seems like that's been the big thing that's every studio I work with, except with the exception of working with the Scum Frog, which he uses a lot of Pro Tools, but it's mostly been Logic Audio. And I work with Mike Horatska, who he's the engineer and producer, and I'm generally the guy that, I do a lot of the live instrumentation, of course, and I do a producer standpoint and write the music, but he's the guy, controlling the knobs, and he's just really great at what he does. And so generally we'll go outboard just a little bit with like an old Korg analog synthesizer that he has. But other than that, and also laying down live bass or live guitar or me doing live drums, whatever it takes to kind of make the track a little bit warmer. But other than that, it's Logic Audio mostly.
When we last talked, you were talking with the Scum Frog about doing this kind of live thing, and I believe you did get a chance to go out and do like a mini live tour.
Yeah, we did. It was a project called DJs Are Alive, and it was with Christine W., with Static Avenger, DJ Scribble, and the Scum Frog and myself. And it was a project that we did we did 3 or 4 live shows. It was a really exciting project in the sense that we were really down to the wire on if we were going to even pull it off. It was a very, very rehearsed and very, very live project. All the loops, basically the only thing that was not performed live were these just basic loops with just, minimal drums and a bass line. And then we would literally put everything else on top of it live. The drums, Jesse doing the guitar, me jumping on keyboards. We all would trade turns behind the DJ decks doing the different loops. And it was a very choreographed thing. And DJ Scribble did an amazing job scratching and building up all these like big rise-up effects with the Pioneer Effects unit and doing different loops. It was really, when we put it all together, we were literally practicing and trying to pull this together, and we had like just showtime in like 2 hours, and we were all freaking out. But when the stage lights went up and we actually did the show, we really, every show that we did, I can honestly say we really pulled it off, and it was a really cool project. The reason we didn't do more shows was just that it was just very, very hard to coordinate all of our schedules together and put it together as a package in a tour. Everybody always had something else going on. Because it was like kind of this quote-unquote all-star lineup, it was very, very hard to get everybody together at the same time. And that's why we weren't able to do a more extensive tour.
Did you find working with a group like that and that whole live element really pushed you in your own shows and productions? And did it? Yeah,
I was kind of doing the Diffuse Live Experience thing before we did the DJs Are Alive thing, and that's where I bring a big live drum kit, and then I had MC Flint doing live vocals, and then I had Mike Horatska doing bass guitar, electric guitar, vocals, and also keyboards. And basically what that was, and I continue to do that, it's basically me DJing and then us layering different live elements on top of the track, and it's always off the cuff. It's always basically what needs to happen with the track, what would add a little bit more of an element to this, and then that's where we go with. So the show's never the same twice, and it's always changing. It's always just about improvising with the music that's being played with the track. So I do a performance like that. Now I've stripped it down more where I do a thing called Bring the Drums, and sometimes that means performing with Mike Horatska on guitar or with, I just did an Eastern European tour where I had a guitarist out in New York named Spaga that performed with me, and then when I play in San Francisco, I have a keyboardist named Sensei that plays with me there. But a lot of times it's just me and the big drum kit and just kind of adding percussion elements to the tracks that I play.
What are your thoughts on Ableton? Because a lot of people are doing not similar to that, but incorporating other elements into it using Ableton, and some people say, it's a bit of a cheat, but it's technology. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say I'd go back and forth. I mean, it does make the job a lot easier when you're just DJing with it. It certainly takes a lot of the skill out of it, but at the same time, it is technology, and it's always changing and becoming easier to use. So that's just one of those things. I think sometimes, honestly, it can be a little boring. Sometimes it's a little bit. It's exciting that you can mesh up tracks and tweak them there live. That's a really cool idea. Sometimes it makes things a bit too squeaky clean as far as mixing tracks together and everything like that. It's almost too digital, and perfect when you're doing Ableton Live. And I think sometimes it looks a little boring, I think, to have someone just staring at a laptop. But I think there's guys that are pulling it off really well. I think there's two different arguments to that thing, and I think Ableton is a really amazing piece of software, and so it's cool that people are incorporating it.
You have this big event that you're just about to take off on, Earth 66. Explain quickly to the listeners what it's about, and then how are you going to manage to do all this without using, some of those little cheap tricks, or are there some in there and you just won't have to say what they are?
Yeah, well, basically, we're going to have a support car. So basically the idea is I'm going to hop on a bicycle, and I'm going to ride 700 miles on the original Route 66 to raise awareness and money for environmental issues. And basically the biggest idea is to get people on their bikes more and get out of your car and get on their bike a lot more. And there's other easy little day-to-day things I think everyone can do to leave a less of a carbon imprint. There's basically, I think it all came about with me. You're reading the paper and you're seeing things about all the pollution, what's happening with the oceans and what's happening with the ozone, everything, and you just feel like, oh my God, it's spinning out of control. What can I possibly do about all this? And the idea is that if you just get enough people to change just a few things they do every single day, not only can people actually save money doing it, but they can also really, if you multiply that down to thousands of people, you can really significantly impact the environment in a positive way. And so I kind of list 4 simple things everybody can do if they just go to earth66ride.com. They can also go to my website, which is djdfuse.com, and they can link over to it. But I'm just going to ride a bicycle 700 miles and, just kind of talk about different Earth issues along the way. I'm going to do my best to convert rural Route 66 America to house music while I'm doing. I'm going to do DJ stops along the way, and I'm also going to bring a little portable DJ setup. And we're going to I've got a good friend and documentary maker, Jimmy Hoffman, that is going to ride a bicycle with me. He's going to document the journey. We're going to do daily video blogs every single stop. And I've also got my good friend and a former pro rider, Scott Card, who's riding a bicycle, and he's going to be the tech as far as bike repairs, anything we might need to do. And the only support vehicle we're going to have is going to be a hybrid car, and I will be carrying all the spare parts and clean underwear and that kind of thing. So that's kind of how we're going to pull the whole thing off. It's going to be about 10 days of bicycling.
And do you know of many other people within the industry that are doing similar to this? I know I talked with Above and Beyond about 3-4 years ago, and they started with this carbon reduction matching during their flights and so forth, but I haven't really heard much from other people with regards to this.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't heard a lot either, and that was kind of a big motivating factor for me to do it in a way, because I thought, wow, it seems like, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the dance music scene. It seems to be very much about always, let's just have a good time and let's not talk about uncomfortable issues, especially things like politics or whatever. And so I think people tend to be a little bit quiet on that end. And so I'm just hoping I can maybe change that a bit and get people thinking about the environment.
Well, looking at the long run, just in general, a nightclub is probably one of the most destructive forces in general for the music scene. So,
yeah, we plan on doing an Earth 66 tour after the ride, which will be next year in April. And that's one of the big things that I want to talk about, and was going to be a requirement for all the clubs to actually do recycling that night. I don't know how extensively clubs do recycling. That's something that I've thought about. I mean, just bottled water is just a really, really environmentally unsound thing to do, is to buy bottled water. You could literally fill up the water bottle, a fourth of oil is how much energy it takes to actually, process the water, build the bottles, and then actually transport it however many thousands of miles to its location. That's one thing even with clubs that people could change if they just maybe eliminate bottled water. But of course, it's a source of income for clubs. But that's one of those things. That's kind of one of the things that we talk about on the website as well.
Now, your tour date's coming up. You're back, I guess, sort of towards your home area. Is it nice to go back every once in a while, obviously, and just catch up with those friends that you hadn't had a chance to?
Yeah, it really is. I was born and raised in Texas, and I really love Austin. I think it's one of the best cities on the planet. I've traveled a lot, and I always love going back there. And any of my friends that happen to go visit Austin are always calling me first thing, going, "This is the coolest city." So it's always good going back, and I think we will have an Austin date and the Houston date coming up real soon. I think even San Antonio, we're going to be doing a little mini tour through Texas, and I'll be in Dallas here in a few weeks. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Do you have any residencies or anything set up in LA?
In LA, I generally it's funny. Now that I live here, I generally don't play here as much just because I tend to always be flying somewhere else, and it's hard to lock down dates in Los Angeles. We just did a show at King. Mike and I had our label Los Angeles Recordings. We had our 1-year anniversary party there, and it was a smaller type show, kind of 400 people, but it was a hell of a lot of fun. We had a great time, and I think we'll have another kind of a big show set up here in a couple months in LA. We're trying to put it together right now.
And you mentioned finally that you have a new album that you're just starting to work on. Any plans on when you think that will be released, or is that kind of just we'll see where it goes from now, and when it's ready,
we'll see where it goes. We are still kind of batting around ideas on what direction we want to take. When we wrote the album Skyline Lounge, it had some house kind of progressive elements in it, but it was also a lot of down-tempo electronica with a lot of live instrumentation. I think now we want to take it a little bit more of the house direction, and make it a little bit more guitar heavy is kind of what we're talking about. But one thing with Mike and I, we never put terms on what we're going to do when we jump in the studio. We might have an idea of where we want to go, but we really try to let the track write itself. And a lot of times, you put one element down, and all of a sudden that changes the whole direction of the track that you were originally doing. And so we try to always just allow that to happen. So we never know where it's going to go.
Excellent.
But hopefully we have a target. We're hoping to have it wrapped up by the conference next year and have it out probably around April.
Excellent. We're chatting with D-Fuse. The website's earth66ride.com for the website for his Earth 66 ride across 700 kilometers. And then djdfuse.com and lost with a T, angelusrecordings.com. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thank you so much. It was great talking to you. Hey, this is D-Fuse, and you're listening to Amplified Radio with DJ Amps. Hey, this is D-Fuse, and you're listening to my latest track here on Amplified Radio. Enjoy.